everyone, I'm Luke Hector and you're watching The Broken Meeple. This is a YouTube channel about board games where I give reviews, top 10s and my honest opinions, regardless of the consequences.
Get on with it.
And thank you to Asmodee for providing me with a review copy of Star Wars The Deckbuilding Game. Doesn't exactly win many points for originality, does it? And for reasons we'll get on to, doesn't win many points in originality anywhere else, frankly. But what exactly are you doing in this game? Well, one side will take care of the dark side, and one side takes care of the light side. Yeah, what do you expect? It's Star Wars. And the idea is that each of you has a number of bases, of which you can select from multiple during the course of the game. But what essentially happens is you're trying to destroy 3 of your opponent's bases. There are variants in the rulebook to play like a 2v2, or to play the 4 bases in Secret, or to play the full 10 bases, whatever. Generally, your quick game is 3 bases and you win the game. The idea is that you have a starting deck of a bunch of little shuttles and troopers. They essentially allow you to pay resources to buy cards, or they give you fight value in order to go attack the other player, or other things, as we'll get on to. But there's a huge deck of cards that are shuffled together and laid out in a row in front. And the idea is that there'll be 5 cards out, and there'll be a mixture of neutral and Imperial and Rebels. In this case, they're mostly neutral, frankly. But the idea is very much like certain games that are going to be familiar to you as I talk more. You play your hand of 5 cards, you use the resources to buy cards from the middle, but you can also use the fight value to attack cards in the middle that belong to your opponent. They'll have a fight value that you can, attack for draining their hit points and getting a bonus for yourself. But then also, if you have any spare fight value or capital ships like Star Destroyers and the like when you bring them out, you can attack your opponent's base directly. They have hit points that you'll track with these cubes, and once you've done as much damage as the hit point value, off goes the base. It's in your trophy cabinet effectively, and they can choose from a selection of other bases to pick for their next one, each one giving them some special ability or power or a buff or something, so that you can basically try and even things out as the game progresses. That's pretty much most of the game itself. The only other little minor thing is that there is a card that escapes me at the moment, which is essentially a force card, which says whether the force is with you or not. If it's at your side, you'll get a spare resource every turn, but mainly some card effects will determine whether they work for you in better ways based on whether the force is with you.
No, he got the upside, I got the downside. See, there's 2 sides to every Schwartz.
So did any of that sound familiar? I better should have, yeah, because originality is not this game's strong suit. It pretty much is a hybrid of 2 games that have been popular for many years, Star Realms and Ascension, both of which are deck building games. This game is 90% Star Realms. If you've played Star Realms, you've pretty much played this game. You have a hand of 5 cards every time. You may end up being forced to discard cards by your opponent. You play your whole hand, you total up the resources and the fight, and you use it on the trade row, or the market row, or the galaxy row as they want to call it here, whatever, the row as it turns out. And then in terms of everything else, attacking your opponent's bases and that is Star Realms. Where Ascension pops in is the idea that you can attack middle cards, and this is a pretty cool addition, I gotta admit. The components are pretty basic overall. You've got what seems to be a fairly oversized box for this, although I gather being Fantasy Flight they're going to incorporate expansions at some point in the future, but you basically have what you see here. I mean, if you see it here, it's in the game, and if you don't see it here, it's not in the game. You've got a bunch of cubes, fairly basic plastic cubes, 1 big deck of cards for the market row, and everybody's starting bases and shuttles, etc., as well as a few sort of generic ones that you can buy, the Outer Rim Trooper, which is basically the Explorer from Star Realms. And that's essentially it. Artwork is decent. I mean, it's good Star Wars artwork, but frankly, this is Fantasy Flight. You can tell from some of these pictures that they have literally ported it from every single other Star Wars property they do. So to comment that it's got really nice artwork, it's kind of a moot point at this stage, because let's face it, they're just basically going to their portfolio of Star Wars, artwork and just going, bloop, there we go. So did that take much effort? I'm not entirely sure. The rulebook looks like it's going to be a handful, but it's mainly just a fairly small rulebook with a lot of pictorial examples, so it's not difficult to learn how to play the game. I mean, literally Paul Grogan and I sat down and played, a full game of it without any trouble from the rulebook. We had to check it, 2 or 3 times, but I think that was mainly because he was skim reading the rulebook as opposed to me reading it. But All in all, it's pretty straightforward, and as I said, if you've played Star Realms and Ascension, you have 99% of the rules in this game already down before you even start. That's how similar they are. Now, that may sound like a detriment to say, oh, this game's boring. It's not. I mean, I love Star Realms. Star Realms is a 9 out of 10 for me. Ascension, I like. 7 out of 10. I don't particularly care for the theme, if you can call it that, in Ascension, but it's a decent enough deck builder, and I like deck builders. So they've effectively just combined the two and said, well, here you go, here's Star Wars, the deck building game. Now, the factions play out kind of in a similar fashion each time, though. The Rebels are more about disrupting the opponent, whereas the Imperials kind of bring the more hard-hitting units. Makes sense thematically. Even the cards that come out have some good thematic tie-ins. You know, some of the Imperials, are good when they've got other troopers and vehicles with them because you're building up a little mini army. The Jawa, on the other hand, though, I think I found the Jawa here. Exile it from the game to purchase something from the Galaxy discard pile. Well, Jawas scavenge, discarded crap. So that's kind of how they work. And then there's bounty hunters where if you can get them, they get you extra bonuses when you attack cards in the middle row. So there are some cool little tweaks here and there. And there's a really good variant at the back of the book, which I'm surprised they didn't just put in the main game, which allows you to use your purchase resources, so the resources off your cards, to buy it off neutral cards in the middle row. So just like you can attack the opponent's enemy cards, you can also buy off neutral cards and basically use your spare resources for that. Why that's not in the main game, I don't know. It's just a variant, but honestly, I would throw that into every game because it thematically works and it gives something for you to do with your excess resources, because let's face it, there's not a lot of ways to trim your deck in this game. Not a lot of cards allow you to exile other cards, so it's not like the Red Robot faction in Star Realms. Here, your deck's going to get bigger and bigger, and you may not want to actually buy cards after a while if you want to actually have a nice lean deck, so being able to use it to buy off neutral cards works nicely. The flaw with Star Realms is here as well, though, in terms of the curve. Then the curve, I mean the curve of which somebody gets way ahead of themselves. Because some of these cards here are super, super powerful. And yes, they're expensive, but if the opponent can get them, chances of winning sort of drop quite exponentially at that point. I mean, Darth Vader here, he costs 8. Yeah, it's not easy to get 8 resources, but if you do get him, he moves the force counter 2 towards you, which is nearly half the board. You get 6 fight. That is enough to rival most capital starships. And then, while the force is with you, he gains another 4 fight. So this guy can potentially be 10 fight. Most bases don't even have more than 12 hit points. I mean, there's 14, 14, 16, but then you got 12, 10, 10, 8. Yeah, some of these, Darth Vader can almost one-shot most bases by himself. That's a little bit on the stupidly powerful side. That's not to say the Rebels don't have them either, but what I'm getting at is that if your opponent manages to get some really powerful cards early on, it does kind of steamroll them into winning the game. On top of that, there's the issue of when cards appear in the row that aren't yours for a long time. For example, I pulled out 2 Imperial and 3 Rebel stuff here, right? But let's just say I happen to have a bad shuffle, or I ended up with, like, say, a neutral and 4 Rebel cards. Here you go. So the opponent has all the Rebel cards they can ask for, and they can buy lots of nice stuff. Whereas the Imperial player can only basically fight stuff. But if they don't have the cards that they want of their own faction to help them actually get the fight value they need to attack these cards, then it kind of stalls one player into not being able to do a lot, while the other player is happily just going, well, you know what, this turn I'll buy that, this turn I'll buy that, that's fine. You're never going to get 7 fight to kill the Millennium Falcon. You haven't even got any Imperial cards yet, so, I'll just sit here nice and casual. So, the game does warrant a large degree of luck here. But then the game is quick. The game quotes 30 minutes on the box, and that's about right, actually. 30 minutes is all it should take you to fly through a game. It's not quite as quick as Star Realms, because Star Realms, you can get it done in 15 to 20 minutes. It's super fast the way that game goes when you know what you're doing. Here, because you've got a little bit more meat than Star Realms per se, with the whole attacking the row and choosing what base you want and things like that, this one will require a little bit more thinking time and a little bit more, little more length to go with it. Star Realms, the deck building game, is going to depend a bit on your experience with other games. In a vacuum, the game is solid. It's fun, it's got some luck aspects to it, but the game is fast, it's got a theme that a lot of people can relate to. I mean, if you don't like Star Wars, you probably won't buy this game anyway, and it does look good artwork-wise, even if it is recycled, and, you know, it's still in a smallish box and not that expensive. But for someone like me who's got the context of other games, particularly the two that this one is just straight up ripping off. I mean, it's not just, oh, this is taking inspiration from these two. No, this is straight up ripping off Star Realms and Ascension. You know, it's that blatant. I don't even know why you need another designer's name on there, because frankly, it's pretty much whatever those two designs were. But when I got to consider those, yeah, I'd rather play this over Ascension, but then I'd rather play Star Realms over this one, personally. Star Realms, like I say, for me, is lightning fast, looks more beautiful than this does, comes in a smaller box, unless you buy all the content, in which case a bigger box, but it's got more expandability, it's got more content out, whereas this one is only just starting and now needs to build up to that point. So, with that being said, if you want to treat this in a vacuum, the game is probably worthy of a good 7 out of 10. It's good. Not great, but it's fine, it'll do the job, it will appease Star Wars fans, and it's 30 minutes of quick time. For anybody who's seen the context of the other games, this probably isn't going to suddenly surpass those, in which case I'd probably only give it a 6 out of 10, being an okay game. Good, I'd play it every now and again. You know, I wouldn't necessarily keep it, but if it was at a game library and somebody wanted a 2-player Star Wars game that's quite quick, you know what, I could bring this out and it would do the job just fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, but I can't forgive the fact that it is just incredibly unoriginal and in that sense kind of underwhelming when compared to the games that it's straight up ripping off. I'm going to say it's not a bad game, just not one to suddenly go right home about either. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. Remember, if you like what you see, thumb it up on Board Game Geek and on YouTube as well. But also, let me know your thoughts. Is this a game that appeals to you? Do you just prefer to play Star Realms and Ascension? What other games use the same mechanics that this one is using? I don't just mean deck building. I mean specifics like attacking the middle row, etc. You know, it'd be interesting to get some more comparisons to other games. But until next time, check out more content on the show, including the recent reviews I've done for Obsession and Hegemony, two pretty big popular games these days. You're definitely going to want to check out those for some mammoth reviews. But until next time, remember, regardless of whether the Force is with you or not, it's still only a game. Bye for now, everyone.